Today I'm going to ask the question, why does a parent favor one child over another? That's a question I carried with me for most of my life. These next two chapters from my book deal with something almost every child experiences: the need to feel accepted by their parents. When a child feels unconditionally accepted and loved, they grow into themselves naturally. But when acceptance feels uneven or conditional, a child can spend years trying to earn love and approval. These chapters explore that tension through memories from my childhood. Chapter 4, 4 Degrees, Acceptance. My earliest memories are at Webster Street, which must have been 1975, 1976. We lived in a one-bedroom duplex. Cliff and Karen lived next door, and they had two sons about our age. One was named Davy. Mom said Davy had some health issue after I told her that his dinky was different. Davy had not been circumcised. Boys at that age pee in the bushes together. Mom would take us to Hutto's Drugs, and we would eat a barbecue sandwich that I am sure I would consider disgusting today. It was a treat then, though. Jerry Jo lived down the street. There is some memory of her being my girlfriend. Do 4-year-olds really have love interest? Why do we do that? Palmer Elementary. The brick building still stands today. It has been renovated into apartments, but retains the Palmer School name. Miss Summer was my kindergarten teacher. I came in the middle of the year and was way ahead of the other children because I could already count to 100 and tie my shoes. I had no idea then that this boredom I felt would be a repeating pattern throughout my school years. The cafeteria was in the basement. Rectangle pizza, fish on Fridays. Miss Mays was my first grade teacher. It seems our class was half first grade and half second grade. If you finished your work, the reward was being able to go to the floor area near Miss May's desk and color. I peeked up Miss May's dress one time. Curiosity combined with boredom. Why do I have a memory of her dating the principal? Jerry Jo was in that first grade class. She did not seem to remember that she had been my girlfriend just a couple years prior when we lived on Webster Street. Jerry Jo ignored me. Jerry Jo ran into a tree on the playground. Her top teeth pierced her upper lip. I remember looking at the silver painted rocks along the chain link fence and thinking to myself, what a treasure. Jerry Jo's mouth is bleeding and I found silver rocks. What did I find beautiful about her pain? Recess was my favorite subject, seriously. We had a huge playground with basketball courts and of course trees. John Huey was one of my friends in first grade. His left leg was shorter than his right leg, so he had a few extra inches of heel on that left shoe. One day I said, "Hey John, kick the ball with your left foot." "I'm right-footed though," John explained. "Yeah, but come on, you've got the boot." I was pleading at this point. John gave in and that ball flew. John was a big boy, but he made it all the way around the bases. Does John have that same memorable feeling? Did that event make him feel accepted and appreciated in spite of the difference? Aunt Verna had a Harley. She managed the Shamrock Motel for a time and knows how to connect with people. The opposite of my mom. Mom would complain that no one spoke to her. "Mom, did you speak to anyone?" I remember asking her one time. "Well, no, because none of them spoke to me." She seemed to believe in her response. We all went to a county fair and Boxcar Willie was there. We did all the rides and games, listened to Boxcar, and then all piled in the car to go home. I rode in the front on Aunt Verna's boobs. No seatbelt needed. I just held on tight. Brian and I both lived with her at different times when we were older. Aunt Verna makes you feel loved and accepted. Do all little boys think about love, affection, and acceptance? Jealousy and envy, rage and revenge? When do those emotions kick in? Who teaches a boy how to handle these emotions? When unconditional acceptance is experienced, a person can freely express themselves creatively and uniquely. Unconditionally loved and accepted people are no longer concerned with expressing themselves in a way that pleases others, no longer concerned with winning the other person's affections. They are confident and filled with self-esteem, conscious of self-value, and able to love themselves in a healthy way. When we look at astrology, the fourth house is at the base of the natal chart. It is representative of our roots, our family, and our home. The fourth house is ruled by the moon and Cancer. This is the house of unconditional acceptance. Chapter 4 explores the idea of unconditional acceptance, especially from our parents. But what happens when a child feels that acceptance is uneven, when one child seems favored over another? That's what the next chapter explores. Chapter 5, Fatso and Favoritism. Kokomo, Indiana. My mom had a brick that had Kokomo imprinted on it. Many of the original roads were brick and they would just lay over them. Then later, as roads were being worked on, the old Kokomo bricks would be exposed. And we found one on a construction pile one day. It doesn't matter that I spent less than 10 years of my life there. It is my hometown, and there's a connection somehow. We lived at 319 West Markland Avenue when I was age 6 to 9. I searched the address using Street View, and the memories of that little boy came flooding in. The impetus of this book begins there. The night we moved in, a bed rail that leaned innocently against the wall slid down and made a deep connection with the top of my head. I remember Mom holding me in the car as Dad drove us to the hospital. Who knew that 3 stitches would hurt a lot worse than the hook of a steel bed rail? We'd play backyard football. Dad was always the quarterback, and it would usually just be me versus Brian, my brother. I wore that Notre Dame jersey out. We had plays, 1 through 5. 5 was a button hook where you fake the post, which was play 1, and hook back right in front of Dad. Worked every time because with my speed, I could easily outrun Brian to the end zone. Brian was just 1 year and 2 days older than me, but outweighed me by 30 pounds. Brian would eat 2 peanut butter and apricot jelly sandwiches. Brian wore husky jeans. I couldn't even wear Sears Toughskins jeans because the knee patch made my legs break out in a rash. I wore skinny jeans before they were cool. Brian weighed about 80 pounds in the first grade. Often I would call Brian Fatso. Almost as often, he would call me Skinny or Skin and Bones. One time Mom got really mad at me and punished me for calling Brian a fatso. I cried, went outside, and I don't remember exactly how or why, but Dad was there. He asked me, "What's wrong?" Brian calls me Skinny and Skin and Bones, and Mom never says anything, and now I'm in trouble for calling Brian fatso. Dad pulled out his change purse, green and bulging with coins. Dad handed me the whole thing and said that I could go buy some candy and baseball cards. Mom always said I was a sneaky little liar. It is true that I lied a lot, and I did sneak that Cubs sweatshirt to school on picture day. Best school photo ever. I never seemed to get it that it would probably go better if I was forthright and just told the truth. Now that I'm a parent, there's nothing I hate worse than when my daughters lie to me. How ironic. I had big ears that I think I finally grew into in my late 20s. Brian's ears were flat against his head. Being called Dumbo did impact me and my view of myself. I was always 2 inches shorter than Brian, and I remember the elation in my sophomore year when I finally caught and passed him in height. Why are physical characteristics that we can do nothing about so impactful to our psyche and our love of ourselves? I was a lean child. Okay, I was skinny, but not skin and bones. I had some softness to my appearance, not just scrawny bones poking everywhere. What was it about me that did not look promising? It was 4th grade, so I was 10. The bar was set, and one at a time we'd run down the hill and make our jump. The bar moved higher and higher, and each time I'd hustle down the hill, and just before my successful jump, I would hear a group of girls say, "He won't make it." Jump after jump, until finally it was just me and one other boy. The bar had been moved to 4 feet. My competitor went first and did not quite make it over the bar. If I made this jump, I would be the winner. I ran down the hill, careful to time my approach, and leaped hurdle style, left leg first over the bar, and completed the jump successfully with the bar still in place. I don't know what felt better, winning the competition or proving the girls wrong. It was that same year that we had a Civil War trivia contest in our class. The contest went for weeks, and the winner got free Dairy Queen ice cream treats. The teacher had the students submit questions one by one on a single strip of paper. The questions were all gathered into one box. The teacher would then select a question and read it aloud. This was 1 hour of our day, every day for several weeks. In my cleverness, I wrote and submitted questions that were completely off the wall. I memorized those questions and answers, knowing that most students would know the easy questions, but our team would have the advantage on these difficult, obscure facts about the Civil War. The plan worked. Our team sailed to victory. It turned into a contest for second place as we completely crushed the other teams. Maybe it was that cleverness that saved my butt quite literally in that class one day. To say Rodney was the class clown would be an understatement, but Rodney was fun. He brought excitement to an otherwise dull environment. Rodney, Joe, and I were laughing, talking, joking about something, and the teacher had had enough. All 3 of us were taken out into the hallway. I was trembling. I had never been in trouble at school before. Rodney was first up. The teacher reared way back and smack! The paddle found its target on the hind end of this 10-year-old who habitually acted up during class. Rodney seemed to come off the ground as he yelled, and tears streamed out of his face before he landed back onto the floor. "Now get back to class," he was instructed sternly. Next it was Joe. The paddle landed with a firm but much gentler whack. My mind was processing what I just witnessed. Which am I going to receive? Smack or whack? Whack or smack? I am sure I was visibly shaking. "Back to class," Joe was instructed. Then it was just me, the teacher, and an assistant standing in the lonely halls of this elementary school. The teacher called me over. I took 3 steps toward him, tears nearly welling up in my eyes. "Grab your ankles," he said. I did, and the paddle tapped my butt. "Back to class, David." I had gained favor, but why? How? What did he see in me? I was a good student and well-behaved most days. Maybe that was it. A couple years later, we were walking in Gymco, kind of like a Costco or Sam's, and I said, "Mom, I really want this keyboard," pointing out the medium-sized keyboard on the shelf. Mom said, "Would you be happy with this one?" pointing to the teeny tiniest of all the keyboards. "Yeah, sure, Mom," knowing that I wanted a keyboard, and even if I had to start with the little one, I could learn and get a bigger one later. Grandpa had already taught me some tunes. Christmas morning came, and there was that keyboard. I was actually happy until I saw that Mom had bought Brian the medium-sized keyboard that I had initially pointed out. Why did she love him better? After Mom passed in 2013, Dad said, "I'm sorry, David. I never liked how your mother treated you. It just wasn't fair. I just didn't know what to do about it." "Ah, no problem, Dad. You were always fair with me. I love you." "I love you too, David." I often thought that my mom was a B word, but then I chased Joe and Josh, two brothers that lived behind us, in 1983, and I busted the window of their back door with my hand after they ran inside. They had said, "Yo mama." Their mom, Angie, who is first generation German, came over, worried only about me and my hand. She was sure that my hand had been cut. Miss Angie said she would punish Joseph and Joshua. She was believable, loving on the edge. Why does a parent favor one child over another? Why? Does a child ever give up trying to win that affection? How do we gain confidence in ourselves? What happens when a child is not the recipient of unconditional love and acceptance? Mom never talked about anything. The house was always clean. Mom loved to watch Perry Mason and Matlock. Mom read a lot, fiction novels mostly, Reader's Digest magazines. I remember that she read Flowers in the Attic and the subsequent novels by V.C. Andrews. Interesting taste. Mom would make peanut butter fudge and drop cookies. Mom loved black walnuts. I despised them. Not so bad now, but I really didn't like them back then. Mom would make me a batch of drop cookies. No nuts. I felt special. Good night. I love you. See you in the morning. Verbatim. Every single night. It's easy to forget that Mom was just 18 when she had me, her second child. It's easy to forget that Mom was still healing from a broken childhood of her own. Stanley, her father, shot himself when Mom was just 6 years old. Mom would tell me that Grandma favored my aunt over her. Mom got pregnant when she was just 16. Mom never really grew up. And here I was, this curious, energetic little boy. I loved to make noises, still do. Whistles, snaps, pops, clicks, taps, every irritating noise that you can think of. I had a lot of questions that were answered with, "Go outside and play." I think she didn't know what to do with me most of the time. Dad was in the army in the early years and later in the Air Force. There were times that Mom was a single parent in some sense, other than the fact that Dad paid all the bills. Maybe my curiosity drove her nuts. Maybe my need for affection and acceptance was overwhelming. Mom told me that I should be an attorney. You love to argue. Didn't feel like a compliment. And although I didn't believe her until recently, Mom told me that I could do anything I wanted. Mom was right about that. Astrology extra. The fifth house is a natal chart, and the natal chart is ruled by the Sun and Leo. This is our self-expression, our creativity, our shine. My fifth house is empty, but that does not mean that there's no energy or creativity or shine. My fifth house is in Capricorn, so my creativity is structured and has a framework. For example, photography, sculpting. When I used a chainsaw to carve bears out of tree logs, it was methodical, mathematical, and structured. Who creates love using a chainsaw? That's what I call loving on the edge. Looking back now, I realize my mom was still very young and healing from her own childhood. Sometimes the love we receive from our parents is imperfect, not because they don't care, but because they are still healing from their own story. Pain has a way of moving through generations until someone stops long enough to understand it. Every child needs unconditional acceptance. Every child needs unconditional acceptance. When we receive it, we grow into confident adults. When we don't, we often spend years trying to prove we're worthy of love. Maybe part of becoming an adult is learning to give ourselves the acceptance we once hoped to receive from someone else. And remember, if you thought you never had anyone to talk to about these things, you have me now. If this story resonated with you, you might also consider watching my video about my grandma and grandpa. Grandpa's garden and grandma's gun. It's another chapter about how family shapes who we become. If you enjoy these readings from Venus 29 Degrees, feel free to leave a comment and share your thoughts. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, consider subscribing. Thank you for listening. See you next time on Freedom Resolutions.